Hello, and welcome to this episode, an impromptu episode of Talk on Things and Stuff on March 4th of 2021, where we've got interesting goings on afoot. And that is if you step out of your house right now, if you live in the Provo, Utah area around the BYU campus and look at the Y on the mountainside of BYU, you are going to see something remarkable. And that is that you are going to see rainbow lights outlining the Y. It looks like I tried to capture this, while it was still live. It looks like the lights have now died down a little bit. But if you just go online now and do a search for Color the Campus, at Color the Campus on Twitter, or just search it in Google, you'll see some of the imagery from the last hour or so where the BYU campus has been lit up and people are wondering, how did this happen? Where did this come from? Who did this? Is this the church? Is this the school doing this? Well, we're all trying to figure this information out. So in the meantime, let's see what we can do in terms of getting an image of what we were actually looking at there. Here we go. Boop. We'll cover that and then share. Take a look at, because I think we can go back to that video and I'll get it up here and queued. But in the meantime, if you've got questions, you've got comments, give us a phone call, 210-422-2222, and share your thoughts on it. So in the meantime, let me see if I can pull that up again. And we'll see what we got going on here. Let's see. Let's just kind of, I think it's important to see a little bit about what's going on right now, where there have been a number of protests and counter-protests at the BYU campus on this stuff. Let's see. Here is the live stream, and we will share that. There we go. So this is what it looked like earlier. So you can see the camera itself. This was at the start of the live stream about 50 minutes ago, where you've got what looks like lights all around the outline of the Y on the hillside, and they are arrayed in such a way that you have rainbows totally filling up the area there. So that's some really interesting stuff. So if you want to call and share your thoughts on it, you can dial 210-422-2222 and share your comments. All right, so in the meantime, let's see here. Me Too says, this can't be true. Some heads will roll. David Bednar will not stand for this. That may be true. I don't know. An interesting development on this front is that the official Twitter account of BYU went ahead and issued a statement specifically denying that they had anything to do with this display of support for LGBTQ individuals on campus. Let me see if I can share that with you guys now. So we will hit stop screen and we will hit share screen. And we'll take a look at we can just do the application window. That way we can catch that whole thing and we'll hit share there. So here we've got the official BYU thread here saying that they did not authorize the lighting of the Y tonight. The Y is BYU property, and any form of public expression on university property requires public approval. And then people are weighing in on that, because when you participate in social media, you kind of get people weighing in on what they think about what you're saying. And there's some interesting stuff on here. Utah Jazz basketball, delete this tweet, BYU. You should have said what Papa Osler said. So we'll have to see what Papa Osler said. There are people giving support for it. Usually in controversial things like this, you'll get a lot of Mormons weighing in that there's no way that the Brethren would stand in support of that. Remember, what this is in remembrance of is a year ago, the church issued what seemed to be a new policy, which would allow LGBTQ members on campus to live and act according to their personal conscience, and that this would not be considered a violation of the code of conduct, not be a reportable event, so long as they continued to maintain the standards of the law of chastity. And so there was a lot of fanfare, a lot of celebration over this. People didn't believe it at first, and they went and verified it, and the official standards office at BYU said, yes, this is it. And so people started to celebrate and come out in a public way that they previously were not able to on campus. And you even had a professor give a brief talk about how, as students leave the insular environment of BYU, where everybody holds Mormon standards, and go out into the wider world, they need to know how to accept and love people who have different standards and different ways of thinking, and see them as good people and work with them, because even if you're Mormon, the world is not. And so you've got to be able to live in a world and still treat other people with respect. And so he said that this was actually a good thing because it was going to teach them and prepare them for that at the beginning. Well, a few days later, apparently some heads rolled from the higher ups who came down and said, no, you need to get rid of this new policy adjustment. This does not mean that students who are at BYU who are LGBT can live according to their conscience openly on campus, even if they're keeping the law of chastity. And so it was a big whiplash on this issue. Well, that happened a year ago, and people are now commemorating that with protests and, of course, counter protests, just trying to bring this issue back into center stage to show people that, hey, there's still work to be done on this issue. To the extent that there were celebrations, people coming out and starting to breathe the fresh air of being able to live according to their conscience, and then they had to crawl back into those closets as the church had modified its policy and live with the aftermath of that. Well, that harm, that damage, that's still being done. Just because the church reversed its policy and now it's not talking about it doesn't mean that those people have gone away, or that the yearning that they have to live according to their conscience has gone away. So, let's see, what else we got? The same people responsible for this put those caffeine-containing Pepsi-Cola machines on campus. I don't know about that, but let's see what we can find out about who did this. So there is an @ or hashtag going around for this in the form of Color the Campus. So if you go to Twitter and go to the Color the Campus page, you can see that they have been tweeting out memes and statements and photos, kind of projecting that they are going to find some meaningful way to show their support for the people who have been living under the boot of these type of policies. And so I encourage you to check out their Twitter feed and like and share and show your support for the message of love and acceptance, of encouragement that they are showing. So, Octavius Moonfire says, didn't they have a valedictorian make his sexuality a main point in his speech? And the answer is yes. And you can find that speech online, and you can see when you listen to his words how meaningful it would be to all of the people who have had to deny and hide that aspect of themselves while they go through the young adult experience of a college environment. Even while they're trying to maintain the standards of chastity, how that can be so damaging to themselves as they're trying to mature into adults, to have to keep that aspect of their life hidden. So let's see here. Maxwell's Unearthly says, ethically, this school is behind like 50 years, just like the leaders. Well, if you know anything about church history, you know that that's kind of how the church rolls. They they stick to their guns because the Lord never changes, and the prophets have told you what the Lord says, while society around them evolves and changes and comes to terms with allowing greater freedom, greater liberty, and more acceptance and love in a way that takes away a lot of the violence and repression that happen when you have those rigid structures in place. So society moves and evolves around the church, and the church holds its ground for decades. And if you take a look back in the podcast here, we've talked about how this was very true on the issue of race. You can also see a number of feminist Mormon podcasts about how this has been true and continues to be true on how the church deals with women in its clergy, in its membership. It's really remarkable. Okay, so let's see here. Again, do I have the banner up? If you want to join the conversation, you can dial 210-422-2222. When did you first hear about this going on tonight? Let's see if it looks like the stream has died down. Comments are not yet on for it. Let's see. Oh, we got a call. Let's see what we got. Hello, you are on Talk on Things and Stuff. I'm doing well. How about yourself? Are you at a place where you can actually see this going on, or are you having to rely on the stream? I'm in the same boat. I don't think anyone did. It kind of hit like a surprise just an hour or so ago. I'm going to pause you right there because I'm getting people telling me they can't hear you. So I'm going to try to see if I can make that work. Let's see here. If I change this to... No, that's okay. I think what I need to do is I need to go into my audio and I need to add a input in the form of Chrome. Okay, speak.
Okay, hello. Can you guys hear me now?
Okay, I'm gonna have to have you start over.
Yeah,
okay, I think
no
it's working
problems
now.
at all.
Hold on, someone else
Okay,
is saying
great.
it's not working. Hold up. Okay, so if I go here and go to speaker, Okay, try talking now.
Yeah, no problem. So, like I was saying before, I don't know if you you guys you probably weren't aware of this situation in the live stream, right?
No, it just showed up out of the blue. And I don't think anyone knew that this was happening. And it sounds like since BYU has had to deny that they were involved in it, and furthermore, they're saying that it's against their policy for people to have any public display on their property. It sounds like this is something that people had to coordinate without telling anyone. Otherwise, it would have been prevented.
Yeah, and thoughts on things. This is actually really interesting and really great because it tells me that the majority of the students attending the school are just sick and tired of those who don't have a voice of being restrained and being shoved to the side as if they were literally not as important as those who are heterosexual. And you know, and one last thing that I'm going to say is that when we gather in numbers and when we gather in multitudes to protest peacefully our right for anything, it shows that we can do anything and we can turn anything around when it comes specifically to these religious rhetorics that these leaders have placed upon their members that they know they find disturbing, but they cannot say anything because they feel so individual in their voice alone. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted to say tonight is let's join in multitudes and make our voices heard. And I bet you that these things will be turned around, these policies.
Yeah, I think that's what's really powerful about an act like this is that people may first see it and they say, oh, did the school do it? Is the school showing support? And it really gives the school an opportunity to show to show its true colors one way or the other. Because the school could take this, realize what the optics of it are, and realize what the love and acceptance at the root of it is, and it could embrace that opportunity to live up to that ideal, live up to that standard. And say, we didn't do this, but it looks beautiful. Like if they just said that alone, they could even say, well, we didn't accept or condone the message, but we thought it looked beautiful. But that would give at least the message that they are supporting this notion of love and acceptance. But instead, they have to double down and remind people of their authority, and that people can't do this sort of thing, and to not totally denounce it. And in a sense, it just shows their true colors on the flip side.
Yeah, and Jonathan, you've made a really powerful statement there. And the only thing I'll add to that is that, as I let you go tonight, is that I hope that BYU school here really lets people understand which side they're on by either supporting or doing the opposite of that, because it's time to stand. It's time to stand, and BYU is the school and the administration and the people behind that leadership. They have been standing in the shadows way too long without really showing the love and support that, every one of these people deserve, because they deserve to be loved just like anyone else.
Yeah.
So,
and that, very, very true. I can't agree with you more.
Thank you so much for giving me time, and do keep doing a great job. I'm glad to be here.
All right. Take care. Call back.
You too. Take care.
Bye now. Okay. Some strong sentiments there. I think particularly, so this thing has happened, and now all of the students, all the people in social media who've seen the sentiment behind this, get a chance to make their voice heard about how they feel about this. How, do they support it or do they not support it? And the way that things trend in this way give the church a sense of what public sentiment is on these things. And the leaders have the ability to take that public sentiment and decide what's in their best interests. And it is absolutely possible for them to look at the issue of LGBTQ students on campus and come up with a framework within the gospel that will extend the blessings of the gospel, the love, the security of family, the security of position, even within the framework of the church, including full participation in the church. If they just are brave enough to do what church leaders in the past have done, and that is to reinterpret doctrine, to bring new light to the subject of the gospel, to embrace those aspects of the church's family, that those people who are feeling lost and left behind and unloved. So let's see, we're still watching the stream. It's we're doing a replay now. It's not live, but it was live just about an hour ago. So if you want to come and call in and share your thoughts on this, then you can do that at 210-422-2222. Let's see here. We've got Mike B that says, I love this. The church needs to support these students and not condemn them. And even beyond the church, himself supporting it, the church needs to start to model the type of acceptance and love that it wants to see its members who are not quite there yet do. And that's where, when you have a church that has a strong, rigid, top-down hierarchy like the Mormon church, the leaders have even more of an influence on the mind and heart of their members, because all of those members have been trained to follow the prophet. Then if the prophet and the highest leaders can flip the switch and come out with a more expansive way to live the gospel and to conceive of the gospel, then that will very quickly kind of make its way down to the rank and file members. And they may have difficulty with it at first, but if you have had people in your life who are LGBT, then you understand how even when it's difficult to understand and to accept and to know at first, that that sense of love and connection will start to flourish and you'll accept them. All right, so here we go. Hello, you are on Talk on Things and Stuff.
Hello. I'm a long-time listener. an elderly lady. And until the church, the Mormon church, came out with their announcement on November 5th, 2015, Javi and I were just going to fade away. We were just going to fade away. We left the church, but we were going to just fade.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come on the news and they tell us about how they're going to make it so the children of the gay people can't receive their baptismal blessings.
Yeah.
And at that point, these two old codgers had to take their name off of the Mormon church in support of the gay community.
Yeah.
And I just had to say that. We support them. We're old-timers. We was in the church for over 65 years.
Wow.
And then, of course, they did their back. They did their back stroke, where they came out and said, "Well, this is Revelation." No, it's not Revelation. 2.5 years later, or something like that.
Yeah.
But
that
I
was
just wanted to say.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And it's funny because so many times it's almost like people who discuss these issues, and this happened around the race issue, is they would kind of lay some blame at the foot of the more senior members of the church. They say, well, we need to wait for a generation to kind of, by attrition, leave the church so that it'll be more accepting of this new way of being, whether it's accepting people of color in the priesthood and leadership positions in the church, or even today with this issue of gay, lesbian, and trans family members and friends in the church. And it's so heartening to hear that even people in that class that they used to kind of use as an excuse for not changing, like yourself and your husband, saw through all of that and were able to say, no, it doesn't matter how old you are, where you are in your position. You have to decide, are you going to stand for an organization that is doubling down on the hurt and the pain, or is actually going to live up to what they seem to preach all the time in terms of love and acceptance?
Amen. And I was also there when they changed, when some black women came to our ward and they asked them to sit on the back row.
Wow.
I mean, as my husband and I would say, we've had a belly full. They can no longer hide behind that they're a loving church, because by their very actions, they prove that they're not.
Yeah.
And but like I say, we have no cause, but we marched for the children, even though we're old. We went down there and marched for the children. I mean, on every issue, the Mormon, and I say Mormon, church has been on the wrong side. To every issue. I remember when the Relief Society had to turn their money over to the Brethren. That was in the 50s. And the hurt that caused the women. But see, they're on the wrong side of every issue. Even if it means hurting little children.
Yeah.
That can't be from God, Mormon Church, if anybody's listening. So I'm old. I support the gay people. I have never met such nice people in my life. They're tender, they're nice, they're good people, and I want them to know that.
Thank you so much for your sentiments. I appreciate the call.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, take care. All right. That is just a phenomenal story of how the capacity to love and embrace people who think differently or conceive of themselves or the world differently is within the hearts of members of the church, no matter what age that they are. Except apparently if they're in the velvet red seats at the front of the general conference room. But I think we all know that there is a sifting that happens as the leaders raise in the ranks. And your ability to defer to authority and to be a company man is what gets you to the next level higher. Whether it's a 70 and then an apostle and then the prophet, they're all looking for people who will toe the line and not think differently, not step out of line, not muddy the waters or make problems. And so all the people who would think differently, who would move in a more progressive direction, they get sifted out before they ever get to the velvet seats. And that's why you end up with this entrenched gerontocracy that keeps the church in the mindset that is decades beyond stale on these very important social issues. All right. Hello, you are on Talk on Things and Stuff.
Hello, this is Robert.
Hey, Robert, how's it going? Did you see the Y on the mountainside? Are you happen to be physically there where you could see it?
I am not. I'm not.
How did you find out about it?
I've been following a bit on Twitter, people announcing that they were going to be celebrating the rainbow and LGBT people at the BYU campus. And when your live broadcast came up, I quickly checked Twitter again and saw some of the pictures. So thank you for alerting us to it.
So what's on your mind? What do you think about all of this?
Well, it brought to my mind a gay friend that I have who's been happily married to his husband for quite a few years, who posted on social media a while back that he was tired of people saying to him, we love you, I love you, but I can't accept your marriage. And that he wanted them out of his life because they did not accept him, they were not supportive of him, and how he lived his life. And he said, please delete me as your friend now, and if you say that to me, I will delete you as my friend.
Wow.
And it really had an impact on me as I read that and thought about it, and thought about how the leadership of the LDS Church repeatedly says that they love the LGBT members of the church, but then continually say to them that they cannot express the relationships that they want to express, that they cannot be married in the way that they want to be married, and that because of that, they're forbidden to marry, of course, in that way in the temple, and that because of that, they know that they're telling those people that, by living a celibate life, in order to remain in the good graces of the church, you will never make it to the highest level of heaven. They are condemning these people. And so it's an interesting thing to say, well, I guess, Mormons have the right to believe that, but I think it's wrong. There's no evidence of it in the scriptures, in the Mormon scripture certainly. There's no evidence that God
It's funny too,
it.
because I think people who aren't familiar with Mormonism or just see Mormonism as another religion might look at this issue and not really understand the nature of the harm, the nature of the wound. But when you are raised Mormon, your whole family's Mormon, you're in a community of Mormons, and there's all of the trappings of the proclamation on the family, the elevation of the kind of the nuclear family in the traditional sense as the only and highest and noblest aspiration that you could have on the planet Earth. And then coming to terms with your own sexuality and identity, and then seeing how there is no room for you to be in that community and have a sense of self-integrity, self-worth and value, it is so damaging. And it doesn't matter how many times they say, I love you, and then twist the dagger in the doctrinal heart that they're doing. It hurts, and it doesn't matter if they say that they love. Because that notion, I love you, it's almost like a cudgel that they use to say you have to accept what I'm saying because it's for your own good. But at the same time, it relieves them. It's a way, it's like a moral license for them not to try to have empathy, because they're relying on the proclamations of, the leaders said this is God's law and it's God's law. So, it's a way we show love by helping you to come to terms with God's law. But it's such a powerful, I think, way for people to separate their heart and their conscience from the church. And when they are able to flip the switch and say, let me actually have empathy and see what would it like to be in the shoes of somebody like that. And for me, one of the most pronounced stories of this was Bill Reel, who hosts the Mormon Discussions podcast. I remember when I first started listening to him, he was still in the defending the church mode. And there was an interview where somebody asked him, so could you do it? Could you be celibate for the rest of your life? If you were gay, if all of a sudden you were gay, could you be celibate and not be able to live the fullest extent of human life in full familial love with the object of your affection for the rest of your life? And I remember the pause and the hesitation in his voice. And later when he talked about his own journey, he said that question suddenly brought everything into crystal clarity for him about the nature of what the church was doing, what it represented, and how it was completely inconsistent with the notion of love that it should be having towards people whose reality is that. And it was a powerful force in his own conversion, but it allowed his own compassion, his own empathy that existed within his heart, that had been covered over and shielded from himself by the doctrine and dogma of the church. And as soon as he let that, the compassion in his heart break through those bonds and allow him to say, I can reject what the leaders say and give voice and give life to that compassion, it completely changed his mindset. And I think that type of transformation is happening in the lives of people who have children, who have brothers, sisters, parents, loved ones, finally feel brave enough to come to terms and to share that aspect of themselves. And it's given them an opportunity to show that love and to see where that contrast is between what the church has done. So your points are very well taken.
Conservatives in our society are often described as people who cannot imagine change and cannot support the change and want to argue that certain changes will bring negative effects. Just like when conservative people, racist people, said that blacks and whites should not marry for all of the reasons they gave. And now, decades later, we know that none of those reasons were true. There have been no ill effects, none. No ill effects from interracial marriage. And now we are starting to see the same with homosexual marriage and relationships, parenting by same-sex couples.
Yeah.
There is no negative effects whatsoever on our society from this. It's not supported by anything. When the church fought against the overturning of the law, Proposition 8 in California, they had to go before a judge. And I read their document. They could not find any scientific studies to support their position. But there were a multitude that supported the other side. The judge, I read those documents. That judge had an obvious answer and decision to make, which was that the preponderance of the evidence presented to him was that there was absolutely no reason to prohibit same-sex marriage.
The Proposition 8 debacle had so many, I think, revealing aspects of it after the fact, where we learned what the church was actually doing behind the scenes, the way it was using its hierarchy of influence among members and in the community in California to try to exert changes there, the way it was lied about by apostles of the church as they went and talked about it afterwards, saying that there was not one red cent spent in that effort. And on top of that, seeing how here in Texas, we're not in California, but when you look at the various databases that were published of people who donated to the Prop 8 cause, you can find people in Texas, including the person who became my stake president. He was the highest donor in this area for Prop 8. And so, it raises the question, was your fealty to that cause something that would bring you notoriety or notice in the church higher up, and then a few years later being your stake president? When you fuel when you combine that religious authority and influence with outdated, hate-fueled dogma that you never question, you never go back and see. I think conservatism, in terms of trying to not change things too fast, conservatism in and of itself is not inherently bad. But the things that they try to hold on to, that the principle of conservatism is saying that we just can't change, that's the principle, that's where it messes up, when they're not willing to examine those things that they are defending and question, wait, is this really worth defending against change? And I think, as soon as they were willing on the issue of race to go back and say, wait a second, there is no legitimate reason for us to support segregation, to, condemn miscegenation, or to promote anti-miscegenation or mixed marriages, that's where you have to let go of those things. So even today, when they're holding on to this dogma, I think their hold on to the dogma is going to gradually just be the old men in the halls of the church holding on to that dogma, while the members have moved way beyond it, because they're all living a reality where their family and loved ones who they see on a day-to-day basis are no less deserving of love and of all of the joy of human life that includes sharing it with your loved one, whoever that happens to be. So
there's so many beliefs from people in the church that get repeated over and over with no basis in fact.
Yeah.
And it just drives me nuts that they are spoken as if we should just accept them. The fact that their feelings are God talking to them. That a man could see words on a stone, that we should accept that. That a man saw angels repeatedly. This just does not happen. There's no evidence for any of that, for the visions of Joseph Smith, for his magical powers. None of that is normal or realistic, and yet it is spoken of as if it's accepted because that's what's always been taught. The same is true about the teachings about the LGBT people from the church. The members simply accept it because it's repeated so often with no basis whatsoever.
Yeah. And, a lot of the times when we come out of the church, we talk about surrendering moral authority to leaders. And when you have a church that raises you from infant, from primary age, with the mantra of follow the prophet, your moral world is shaped by one principle, and that is obedience. And so there's some safety and security in it, in that you never have to really trouble yourself about what's right and what's wrong. All you have to do is parrot what the leaders say, follow the dogma, repeat these things, as you mentioned, without thinking about it, without considering whether or not it's true, without even examining the history. Where did these concepts come from? You just simply obey, and then it gives you the ability to feel very righteous, self-righteous, and condemn others. And I think if you go out and you look at the Desnat tweets, and you look at the people who feel emboldened in their defense of the church and its entrenchment in some of these issues, that ability that they have to feel righteous and elite and emboldened because they're defending the prophet stems from an unwillingness or an inability to go back and question those things and see if that what they're defending has any legitimacy. But it's so intoxicating to be right, to be righteous, to be a warrior for the right, if you haven't even done the work to figure out what the right is, and if your moral compass is anything other than obey and follow the brethren. So
just like the Pharisees that Jesus condemned.
Mm-hmm. And so much of the wider religious world is able to look at the wider Christian world. There's still other churches like Mormons who hold on to hatred and bigotry. But there are other Christian factions who look at the words of Christ, look at the principles taught by Christ, and find a way to apply them to people in their lives who are of any of these persuasions, who choose to live their lives according to their conscience, want to find something that's not conventional and they doesn't fit into the paradigm of the 1950s nuclear family structure that Mormonism is stuck into, but they find a way to have them be accepted and feel completely 100% embraced and loved by the community, embraced and loved by their God, and that they have the potential to become everything that their God has to offer.
Yes.
So,
religion has the ability to create community of love if they so choose to.
yep.
The Mormon Church has not chosen that.
But they will. I believe in them. I think they'll get there. They drag their feet. And I think, it's one thing to go about and rail against the church and criticize the church and call them bigots and call them all sorts of names. And that's a type of social pressure. But what we're seeing here is very different, because what they're doing is they're simply, through an expression of beauty that has strong symbolic meaning, it's saturated with symbolism and emotion and compassion. And it's not condemning the brethren, it's not condemning the administration, it's simply showing love by example, by public example. And that type of message gets into the hearts of people who maybe wouldn't have thought about it any other way. So that's why this type of advocacy for rights I really love and embrace. And we'll see if whoever did it gets arrested or something. The BYU police, we know, have their own way of doing things.
True. Well, thank you, Jonathan. I'll let others try to call in as well. Thank you.
Love your call. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Well, what do you think? If you want to join the conversation, you can call 210-422-2222. Let's see, what other stuff do we have going on here? Let's see here. Oh, hold up, we got another call. Hello, you are on Talk on Things and Stuff.
Hi, Jonathan. Great show tonight.
Oh, hey, what's on your mind?
I'm hearing squealing. Is that me or you?
No, I'm not sure what that is.
Okay. Hey, yeah, Jonathan, I got a couple quick little bullet points to run by you, and I'll tie it together in a nice little bow. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. And I'm being a little vulnerable tonight here. Okay.
Okay.
Our family, we had the proclamation to family on our wall literally for decades, because I guess that's what you do. I read it when it came out and everything, and even all those years ago, I just, I kind of got a little weird feelings. I have extended members of my family who are gay, and my view on it has always been, even as a TBM, I don't care, but, and so here's the thing. As a TBM, this is important to point that out. As a TBM, I saw in 2003 a movie came out called Latter Days, and it's about a missionary who goes to California, and the scenery looked very exactly like the mission I went on in the mid '80s in California. So that caught my attention. Anyway, this young, wonderful, Idaho boy, he has a gay relationship with somebody next to their apartment. And the way they portrayed it was really accurate of missionaries. Missionaries are knuckleheads. The main character, he's a great guy and stuff. But as a TBM, and then it led to him getting busted and all the shame and all the courts and all that. And his dad was in the state presidency. It was horrible. And his mom couldn't even look at him in the eye and these type of things. And he wound up in conversion therapy. So this is in 2003, or a couple years after, when I saw it, and I'm thinking that, as a TBM, that can't be right. So I was in denial. I have to admit, I was in denial. Then, years later, the previous caller mentioned Prop 8. I saw a documentary on it, and they were talking about how the church was really supported, everybody's protesting and all that. They don't talk about that in Sunday school. I never heard that. And I was rooting for the gay couple because they were really nice. It's like, what the hell? Go ahead. Welcome to the NFL, ladies. When you're married, you're married. It's going to be a wild ride, and it's going to be great too. So good. Yeah. So, but it's like, so that bothers me personally. It bothered me as I went through my transition and stuff. But I always within, I held that resolve that hey, okay, the church is true. I don't agree with this, and I don't care what anybody says. I just don't. But still, the church is true. So what locked me in? And for me, everybody's different. For me, it was like my spiritual witnesses. Okay, I'm Mr. Field.
Yeah.
I get the feels. So I had these spiritual experiences. Blah blah blah. And so that's what like means. Well, the church is true. Well, you know, maybe the brethren are messing up or whatever. I'm trying to reconstruct the mental gymnastics I had to go through. And so I just think that there are many people who are in the church and even, you know, true believing and all that, but they just know that something's wrong, and they are in a system where they can't really freely speak about it and everything. Anyway, I just want to run those things by you because I have a. By the way, I rewatched that movie this past month. Oh, that's Yugi. Hey, Yugi. You go, boy.
He's mad at me for keeping him out.
I think it's me. He says this guy's going way too long.
What movie did you rewatch?
No, I rewatched Latter Days, the one from 2003. Not only did I rewatch it just last month, I rewatched it with somebody who's LGBT, who I love and respect, and they're a younger person, and I got feedback from them, and watching it again was really something. It really hit me deep inside to how I could look at this years ago and how you know, my views then. Now, I didn't support it. It made me uncomfortable the whole time. I just didn't believe it. I was in denial about it. But now that I know that all that really happened and watching it again, it's like, holy cow! It'll really rip your heart out. I'm telling you. So it's called Latter Days. Great movie. But
right,
anyway, so.
Well, I wanted to respond to your story, and it's kind of like with my own story. I wish that I could say the same thing that you did, and I have such respect for people like yourself who, even in the believing mindset, were able to say, you know, that's not really right, because I was not that way. I was very much in the brethren say it's wickedness. Of course, you know, if you watch porn and you masturbate, you're going to turn gay. And so people who are gay, it's just a complete, I mean, they did it to themselves. What do you think? Of course, wickedness is going to turn you to that. Or they were abused. And they're probably all pedophiles. And so all these people who are fighting to change these things, they're probably just secretly trying to normalize it in our society so that they can, you know, live a wicked life. Like all those things that are part of the current of messaging in the church, you know, the discussions in the halls, even if the brethren don't officially say it, these are the things that float around in the air. And I just absorbed it all because it all was consistent with what I was told God's position on this issue was. And I remember I had a good friend in Boston when I was there who was raised Jewish. And he's like this total like New Yorker, but he fell in love with a Mormon girl. He converted. And he was the first person I ever encountered, because I was like, you know, gays shouldn't be able to get married. Like, we shouldn't change, you know, we're going to redefine marriage just so some, you know, wicked people can live their iniquitous lifestyle. And he's like, dude, I don't care if they get married. If they get married, it's not like my love for my wife is going to change. Let them get married. It doesn't affect me. And I was just like, how can you be a member of the church and believe that? And you know, that's part of why, you know, a lot of people who become very vocal ex-Mormons, it's almost like, you know, I don't know if it's like a form of atonement for the way that we were as Mormons. For me, I felt like I had been betrayed by my reliance for my moral framework on these men claiming authority, where, you know, I never even got to flex any moral muscles growing up because I never had to. The answers were all there. I never had to consider any issue on its merits by looking at first principles. And so
you were locked in. You were locked in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so discovering for the first time my own conscience as I wrestled with these issues in leaving the church, when I said, well, wait a second, if the authority of the brethren to speak for God is wrong, then all of these things that they've informed me about how to view the world are wrong. Or it's not so much that they're wrong, but I need to see if they're right. And, you know, sure, there's a lot of stuff that the leaders teach that I think is good. You know, don't steal, don't kill, don't rape, don't murder. Like, those are all fine. They teach those are right. But that doesn't mean that everything they taught is right. And so it was really going on that journey of rediscovering, allowing the empathy and compassion that exists in my heart to start to take shape, and then starting to rebuild a moral framework for myself that is me, and not simply one that exists because I surrendered that moral authority to these church leaders.
Yeah, I agree. Do you mind if I comment back on a couple of those points?
No, please do. I'm going to get Yu-Gi-Oh because he's...
Yeah, get Yu-Gi-Oh. Get him in here. I've got the video. Yeah, get him in here. I want to see him on the screen. Little Yu-Gi. He's so cute. Yeah, it's The two things that you said. You said, I wish I could have said that about, what I was telling you.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? I heard the thing in 2015. I didn't really understand it fully. There was a controversy. It was just like, it didn't make sense to me, but I didn't like it at all. But the elderly lady who said that they were in the church for 65 years, and when it came out in 2015, she said, or they said, we are out. I want to stand up and applaud her and commend her, because I wish I had done that exactly when she did, but I didn't. See, I couldn't let it go because of the sureness of my testimony. So, and the other thing is, you said something about ex-Mormons that are vocal and everything. They want to make up for it, and I think there is great truth in that. Because I feel the same. I feel that way. It's funny. Oh, I'm sorry for what I said when I was a Mormon, and you say Mormon stuff, but no, sir. I was in the church for a long time. And I taught. I'm a goofball, so I'm a good teacher. I always got taught teaching classes, adults, kids, everything. I've spent literally thousands of hours teaching gospel doctrine, according to the church, over the past decades. And I'm sorry. I want to tell each of them that I taught that are adults now. A couple of them are grandmothers, I think, by now. But I want to say, all I want to say is, hey, I was wrong. I'm sorry. You may not. I got to do it one time. I think I told you before. To one of my seminary students, I said, he took me to lunch, and he's a super guy. I said, I'm sorry. I know you don't understand, but I just want you to know that if it ever comes up one day, I want you to know I looked you in the eye and I said, I'm so sorry that I was part of teaching and everything. And I wasn't negative or anything. I didn't say that part of indoctrinating you, but yes, I indoctrinated young people who trusted me, and it breaks my heart. Yes, sir. Yeah.
No,
So
I totally feel that. I think all of us who are parents, who spent the early formative years of our children and giving them their worldview, have a lot to think back on. And to some extent, you have to forgive yourself, because you were relying on what you were told was real. You were operating with the operating system that you were given. And I know it's different, and you have feelings. Being a convert is different from being born in the church. But it's very humbling. And I think a lot of us have had that kind of conversation where we apologize for the things that we taught or espoused or supported or funded. It's part of the fun journey of coming out of this group and rebuilding your life on your own terms.
Right. Hey, Craig, quick question. I don't want to hold you up. Quick question though. I got to ask. How many primary presentations have you sat through where your own children were in, and the children are adorable, and the songs, the singing's beautiful? Who doesn't want to watch the beautiful children?
I know.
But how many have you sat through a bunch of them, John? Watching your beautiful children sing?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, every time. Well, here's this year's primary program. It comes from on high, and they basically just spit out the same indoctrination in their beautiful, childlike way. And a Christmas program's different, sure, but when they do the presentation, and Joseph Smith this, and then the Mormon narrative coming out of their precious little mouths, and I watched it, and I beamed at how beautiful and wonderful they were, and how wonderful the gospel was and stuff. It just, boy, it goes deep, doesn't it, John? It goes deep.
Yeah, it does.
Anyway, well, I'll give you somebody else's chance. Appreciate you talking to me.
Always good to hear from you, Gimpy. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right. It's interesting that so I want to kind of fast forward this near the end, and I want to get a sense. Maybe we'll speed it up to twice the speed, and I want to see what it looked like around the time that it was broken up, because something happened and it dispersed. So let's see if we can have the internet stream catch up with it. We can see the lights there, and it'll be interesting once details of this come out. Is each of these lights a person standing, or were they planted and then all lit up at once? How does it work? All right, so let's see here. I think, here, we got a call. I think we got a call. Hold up. All right. If that was you calling, try calling back, because I think there was an issue. Okay, so here we're starting to see now. I'm going to back it up just a little bit more. Okay, so there's a little bit of wiggling. It looks like each light may actually be 2 lights. And it looks like each of these lights is a person, because you can see that one starts walking around. Okay, we got a call. Hello, you are on Talk on Things and Stuff.
Hello. Hello.
Hi. What's on your mind?
I went to BYU for 1 semester, and I left. I'm trans, and I am super, super happy about this. I think it's a really effective activism strategy, because it is the more that we make this issue visible, the more it forces the administration's hand. I think that the church administration, their preference is to handle LGBT issues as quietly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to remember that the reason that the policy of exclusion was such a big deal in the first place is because someone leaked it.
Yeah.
And the reason that we're having Rainbow Day now is because it's the anniversary of when the BYU administration just like quietly and suddenly removed the section on actions that give expression to same-sex attraction from the honor code, and then undid it. I am really hopeful that even if they do crack down on the people that did this, it forces them to show their hand, and then the discussion can be had about, where the administration stands. I think that they would prefer to, let the bishops do things, just leave it up to Bishop Roulette, not have very visible policy on the record that people can criticize.
Yeah. I mean, the point that you make about, a big part of why this blew up was that it was the original policy, November 15, was going to be kind of just a under the carpet. We're changing the manual in this little sly update that's now going to give more specific direction to priesthood leaders. And so if it wasn't leaked, it would just slowly start to subtly change the way that the church operated and the composition of the church, because suddenly people who previously would have gone into the church ranks would have been denied that opportunity if their parents were in a relationship, gay marriage or something like that. They would have just been quietly denied that opportunity. And it's one of those things where you have a subtle change of the composition of the church that comes from the system, from the institution, in an almost invisible way. But when it becomes public knowledge, then suddenly people can see it for what it is. And that was a very powerful way to eventually, I believe, change the course that the church was going to make. What is it, this type of activism where it's not just it's not really a harsh criticism of the church, it's simply a symbolic expression. How does this strike you differently from other types of ways to try to get the church to move on this issue?
I think that membership responds better to it. I think it's very easy as a queer person who was part of the church to your gut reaction is to be aggressive and call them out very clearly. But I do think ultimately not going after the leadership for the things that they do is the right move. It's just more effective. I do think my impression of the climate among queer people at BYU is that they become very, very cynical very, very quickly. I remember asking trans woman who was an alumni, what should I do? How should I, try to make it through BYU? And she just said, get out.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's ultimately, it's the right move. But it is hard to do it sometimes.
Yeah, I think particularly because no matter what your identity is as you start to shape it and form it in your young years, and you've been led to that point through your whole life with your family encouraging you and supporting you and putting either your mission or that time at BYU as like this golden trophy at the end of your childhood and your youth. That's going to be especially if you had parents that go there, it's going to be such a transformative experience for you. And so there's all of this meaning built into it. And then if it suddenly becomes, or you discover it to be a hostile environment to who you are, it kind of, it takes away from what it could be as a cultural milestone for you. And if we can just see the trajectory of the school, at least, take shape along the lines of what it did a year ago when it first made that policy, which removed the penalties and the reporting, then people could find belonging, they could find acceptance, they could find a love for the culture and the experience of college at BYU in a way that they would, now again are restricted from being. So I think I agree with you that speaking to the positive aspects of what the church could be if it lived up to this ideal of love and compassion is going to be so much more powerful than constant barraging, criticism, and negativity. And those things have their place, but there needs to be another way to reach people as well. And so I'm glad that you see that in what's going on here. Well,
that's all I have to say.
People accuse me of being an old, out-of-touch guy. So what do you think in terms of your peers, people who raised in the age of social media, who, see the power of symbols like this? Have you checked Twitter? Like, what is the discussion of this act looking like in social media, or have you had time to do that?
I don't know. I just found out about it from you.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I encourage you and anyone else in the viewership to go and see what kind of discussions are happening, because a lot of the time acts like this, a big part of their function is really just to start discussion, to get people to question their preconceived notions, question the dogmas that they've held onto, and say, well, wait a second, do I need to re-examine that and see what it is? And I think, some people may look at an act like that and say it really means nothing, it changes nothing. And I think the future will tell, if it does or not. But at least people who maybe have been feeling like they were alone, or that nobody cared for them or understood them, can at least look at an image like this and say, well, somebody out there is risking themselves to try to at least project an example of love and compassion that gives me hope. And that's what I'm hoping that something like this does.
Yes, for sure. Just even seeing a little pride flags, a little sticker somewhere, was a huge boost of hope while I was there. I will say, did anyone talk about the umbrella thing?
I know that was part of the controversy over today. Is there something on your mind about it? What would you want to share about it?
No, that's just that is what I did hear about before now. I heard about the plans to do that.
Yeah.
I do think BYU will be very essential in the fight for the equality of LGBT people in the church. This is, I think, if anywhere is where the conversation is going to happen, it's going to be at these colleges.
Yeah.
And that is where some of the strongest reactions against it will probably come to.
Yeah.
The natural result. So.
Yeah. You've got a mix of both the most liberal or progressive thinking people, as well as the most conservative and staunch people, and so that's where the clash is going to happen. But hopefully, it will end up in changing hearts and minds in the direction of love and acceptance. So, thank you so much for your call and sharing your story.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for hosting.
All right, take care.
You too.
Bye. All right, so let's see here. Let's see, I've slowed it down a little bit, but I want to see if we bring it back up to, let's bring it up to 1.5 speed. There's a point at which we start to see the lights wiggle. There it is. And then we start to see the shape lose its form as some of the lights go out, and you can see some of them walk around. So it appears that these are people standing at each point, holding up these lights, in some cases 2 lights. And at some point, they seem to all at the same time disperse. Some of the lights go out, and it looks like the camera that is being projected there it loses its ability to focus, and the stream goes out. So that's some remarkable stuff. It's a beautiful image. I think that, the stream that they had posted here is remarkable, and it's one thing. But if you take a look at some of the photographs that people took with their digital cameras, it really kind of allows the glow of the lights to be much more accented, and it looks even more striking. We saw a little bit of that on Twitter as we looked at that. Let's see what else there is. I'm totally social media inept, and so I'm sure there's a way to look more completely for photos of this. But I am lost for how to do it. So anyway, okay. Well, if we don't have any other calls, I just wanted to see if I could capture the moment, while it was going on. Unfortunately, we started just as the Y was dispersing. Let's see if we have any other comments while we wait to see if we will probably take 1 or 2 more calls. And let's see here. So Jolene says, I went from so happy to so sad in a matter of minutes. I loved seeing the rainbow Y. I sent the picture to everyone, and then BYU tweeted. And she's referring there to BYU's tweet that specifically said we did not approve the lighting of the BYU Y. And that, I think the act of lighting it this way sends one message, and it gives the church an opportunity to decide how it's going to respond, gives the school an opportunity to decide how it's going to respond, and that is how it chose to respond. That's one of the things that the PR game. I guess we get to see how the church handles that. Okay, so Austin Clark says, I was gifted a wooden proclamation on the family as a wedding gift. I had my name carved at the top and everything. After I left it, I used it to make great s'mores. The catharsis of burning indoctrination propaganda is real. And, maybe you don't understand this as much. If you just go and check out social media spaces where former Jehovah's Witnesses congregate, and you'll find that just burn blood, just do a Google for blood card burning, and you'll see a bunch of images of this little card on fire. And you'll see just different photographs. It's always the same little card, and it's always burning. And what that card was, it was the card that Jehovah's Witnesses keep in their wallet to tell any health professionals that if they are injured, and in order to save their life, you have to give them a blood transfusion. No, they refuse a blood transfusion because Jehovah has said it's not for them. And when people leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, they have to reshape their moral world. And they realize that there is no legitimate moral principle to hold on to this card. And that card then represents the type of oppressive authority that they lived under before. And so the act of burning it is a form of catharsis and a form of reclaiming their own moral authority over their lives. so that they're not living by deception and distortion of reality, but living by the world that they are able to conceive of and shape in their own experience and according to their own conscience. So it's a beautiful thing when you see that. So I can really relate to this act of burning the proclamation on the family. And I think Mormons would be like, well, that means that you want to burn the family. It doesn't mean that you want to burn the family. You can burn cult indoctrination. You can burn propaganda and reclaim those aspects for yourself. The thing is, what these groups that do coercive undue influence do is they take parts of life that are beautiful and they insert themselves into it and they taint it in a way that makes you dependent and subservient to them. And so when you finally escape their clutches and you want to burn, that aspect out of your life, you just have to remember that you're burning the tainted part that they inserted into it, and you're reclaiming those beautiful parts for yourself. So you can reclaim your family, your conception of your family for yourself, and then you can reshape it so that it's more expansive and more inclusive, so that you're not applying hate that you were informed of by dogma. And you can hold on to the beautiful notion of a family and see it as something new and greater. Hello, you are on Talk on Things and Stuff.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks for your show. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
Hey, a couple of weeks ago, I was reading your breakdown of the temple ceremony changes from 2019 on your website.
Yeah.
And now I'm a little fuzzy calling here, but I remember you discussed something about the possibility of the recent temple changes opening the, some of the verbiage making it more open to the possibility of same-sex unions or something like that, making it. Are you still feeling that with the I'm just wondering if you're still if you still have hope for that. I mean, I thought that was a great take. I thought it was really beautiful, and I think there's room in the doctrine for that somewhere. But I mean, I don't know. Do you really think they're going to change? I'll just.
Well, I think I'm trying to remember which change material affected that, and it may have been that in the old temple ceremony, Adam covenanted to obey God as his Lord, and Eve covenanted to obey Adam as Adam obeyed God. And so there was a hierarchy there, and the way they changed it is that both Adam and Eve independently covenant to obey God, and it brought things on an equal footing in a way that could evolve to allow a marriage relationship that allowed two people, regardless of gender, to both covenant to obey God. And so that's one way of conceiving it. And in terms of do I still think that they're going to move in that direction? The thing that I'm reminded of is when you go back and you look at the Lowry-Nelson exchange, that was in the 1940s. And then you look at the Stuart-Udall exchange, or the Stuart-Udall sequence. These are two different blog post series on the website, Thoughts on Things and Stuff. They happened about 2 decades apart, and they were both on the same issue. Both Stuart Udall and Lowry-Nelson confronted the brethren with true principles of universal brotherhood, of advocating against the existing teachings on priesthood ban and black people in general. And when Lowry-Nelson did his thing, he published an article in The Nation, and one of the things that was key in making that publication is he transformed the ban on priesthoods being on priesthood and temple ordinances being given to black people. He transformed it from a doctrine to a policy, and that's one of the first times that you can see them referring to it as a policy rather than a doctrine, and that laid the groundwork for later for them to say, oh, well, if it was doctrine we couldn't change it, but if it's policy we can change it. And so, but again, this is 2 decades, and then Stuart Udall, 1969, it took another decade beyond that before it was actually changed. So when I look at changes happening in the church, you have to look in the span of decades. And sometimes it's just 1 or 2 things here or there that people don't realize are transformative until something clicks later on. And so who knows when that's going to be. I think the age of social media has accelerated the time frame that those things happen in. But, I think when the church eventually does change on this, those will be some of the data points that they'll be able to look back on and draw meaning from in articulating a way forward. The other option is that they just go off into irrelevance in terms of, the people that sit in the pews while they continue to flourish in terms of the amount of money they have in their bank account. Because they're already self-sustaining, just in terms of they make way more money on interest from their investments than they do on tithing, and they continue to grow. Even if no more tithing was paid, they would continue to grow.
Right. Unless they actually start being a charitable corporation. Yeah. Hey, great take.
Laughter.
I was also, I'm remembering, I was really powerfully touched by that article. Now I'm remembering the other wording change that I think you mentioned was in the law of chastity, where it says instead of, relations to your husband or wife, they changed it to someone who you're lawfully wedded.
Yes.
So, yeah.
No, you're right. And that's even more, I think that's even more direct and telling.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant, man. Love your show.
All right. Thanks for the call.
Thanks.
Take care. All right. Well, let's see. Any other comments going on? Okay. This guy named Russell M. Nelson, I swear it's a fake account, but maybe it's real. I don't know. He says there's a difference between burning books and book burning. Burn your Book of Mormons all you want. It's plagiarized nonsense. Anyway, as long as we keep one in the Museum of Ultimate Cons and Kinderhooks. Say what you want about a con, but if you're looking at cons in the world, any con conceived of by a poor farm boy who grew up in a log cabin that results 100 years later in a worldwide church owning hundreds of billions of dollars, there's something to that con. Because, in terms of, there are very few cons that are that successful over that long period of time. And I think it makes a very interesting study as to why it was so successful. And that's where that conversation between John DeLynn and Mike Rinder about Scientology, comparing Scientology to Mormonism, there's the soft aspect of Mormonism that allows it to flourish so much in the lives of its members. It allows people to feel and to be compelled to achieve in the context of the culture of the church is something. And, pair that with a very strong sense of piety and devotion and marry that to a sense of sacrifice and a strong doctrine about tithing, and you've got a remarkable formula for a very wealthy and influential church. So, let's see here. All right, well, I think that's it. If you haven't had a chance to yet, go and search online. Find some beautiful pictures of this symbolic act of advocacy and activism and share it. Let people know that this is an expression of love and acceptance that you stand behind, especially if you are a believing Mormon, if you are a practicing Mormon who loves the culture and the people of the church and want to see it progress and flourish and live up to its promise of being a great, loving, and encompassing society. It has its defects, it has its faults, but humans yearn for community. They yearn for connection. We thrive in a community with connection, and the church does a fantastic job of that at its best. And if we can take some of these harmful and negative aspects and expunge it from the culture and the doctrine of the church to transform it into something that's even more loving and hopeful, then I think we have a chance to really improve people's lives in that regard. And hopefully the leaders of the church, the administrators of the school, will live up to that challenge. All right, so until next time then, this has been Talk on Things and Stuff.